Welcome back. In this week's episode, we discuss an Israeli politician opposing the Green Pass, the importance of economic education, and Florida's Stop Woke Act. I'm Luke.
And I'm Rhodey.
And this is the Right Side of the Compass podcast. Well, I hope you all had a great week so far. I had a great weekend myself. How are you, Rhodey?
I'm good. Had a good week and weekend, but I'm glad to be back.
That's good. That's good. We got some interesting topics today. So the first topic, this is a topic that as an Israeli, I'm ashamed that I didn't know about this. This is 2 months old, but I have to cover this because, number one, because I think it's important for people to see that Israel is not just this compliant country, but also for other Israelis to know that there is resistance to this. Chaver Knesset, Member of Parliament, Gadi Yvarkan, opposes the Green Pass in full view of the Knesset. And I think the story is actually kind of interesting for many.
Yeah, so would you like to go into details about that?
So there was an exchange 2 months ago in the Knesset, the parliament, the Israeli parliament, between a member of parliament, Gadi Yvarkan, and Nitzan Horowitz, who is the health minister. You might call him the COVID czar in the United States. And then presiding over it, I think, I don't know how the Knesset works because I pay attention to American politics because I think it's just way more interesting. Israeli politics sounds like a bunch of hens clucking.
I kind of hear that, though.
No, it's just that it's so not sophisticated because unlike any other, I don't know, representative government, the Knesset really is just it's the worst of every single representative democracy. It's like imagine there was a committee to found Israel and the guy with all the really, really good ideas was just really annoying. So everyone else did the opposite out of spite. That's kind of what the Knesset is. It's like anything that would possibly make the Israeli democratic system an interesting, good body, political body. It seems that all of that went straight out the window. There's no, there isn't really even separation of powers in Israel, which is kind of nuts. It's just the Knesset and the Supreme Court. But I'm amazed by the Israeli government. I really am sometimes. But anyways, I wanted to talk about this situation. You've got this Gadi Yvarkan guy. He's a member of Knesset. He's part of the Likud party. I didn't know that until I saw the video, but now I just want to vote for him. This is how crazy. Like the first thing it says, who is this guy and how can I vote for him? That was like my question. And he's talking about. He basically says that This is what he says. He makes like a short little thing. He says something along the lines of, "I'm for vaccines. I got sick from COVID. Then I took the first vaccine, and then, and then he says you got to oppose the Green Pass because it's dividing Israeli society. He sees that on Facebook, on Twitter, there's a lot of Israeli parents that want to separate their kids from the other kids who are not getting vaccinated or whose parents are unvaccinated, right?
Do you see that too?
Oh yeah, I see that. It's crazy. You go on like some Israel, I don't want to say Israeli Facebook groups because I don't really participate in those, but I see a lot of American groups in Israel, and you see a lot of people on both sides of the issue. But it's the people who are. Here's the thing: the people who are quote unquote anti-vax, they actually don't care if you get vaccinated or not. Like I don't give a crap if you get vaccinated. I don't give a crap if anyone gets vaccinated. That's not my problem. I want the right to make that decision for myself because I've thought about the issue. And I don't want to talk about certain things because I know YouTube has not copyright. They have guidelines on what you can and cannot say about COVID and the vaccine and this and that. So, and I want my videos to be on YouTube, but suffice it to say, I've made the, I guess, for lack of a better term, educated decision to decide not to get vaccinated. And I don't want other people telling me, oh, you can't participate in this and that, and you have to do this and you have to do that if you decide not to get vaccinated. That was my decision. And that's what Gadi Yavarkhan was saying, that people have the right to choose. And if you put this barrier between people who are not vaccinated and participation in society, namely the Green Pass, you're not really giving them much of a choice. That's like saying, "Oh, that's a nice business you got there. It'd be a real shame if it burned down." That's
Wow.
not a choice. That's the mafia. You can always choose not to pay the mafia, but that's not like who does that.
I definitely understand it. It's like, oh, we're not forcing you to take the vaccine, but if you don't, you can't do anything. So
Right.
it's like a backhanded version of mandating it without actually mandating it.
Right. And so what happens then Gadi Yavarkhan, he's in the middle of talking, and this is one of the most telling things to me in like I don't watch a lot of Israeli politics. Like I don't watch what goes on in the actual Knesset so much. I probably should, cuz that would be useful for the show, I
Well,
suppose.
as you coined it, if you like hens clucking at each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, and I think this is why, because I just get angry watching the Knesset more so than I think Congress, because Congress is more like I don't know. I think there's some like genius to Congress, whereas in the Knesset it really just is a den. It's just like a den of liars over there. It really just it feels like just you can have contempt for Congress all you like, but you don't really hate a democratic body until you've seen the Knesset. And I think the meeting was presided over by Ahmed Tibi. Now, Ahmed Tibi, okay, you should know, he's this Israeli Arab, right, who identifies with the Palestinian Liberation Movement. He's very anti-Israel. He ran on the Joint List. He's constantly yammering on and on and on about how bad the Israeli Defense Forces are and how this and how that. He's pretty much the enemy. Like that's how fifth column you can get in Israel. You can get elected to Knesset if you hate Jews. So go figure. So he was presiding over the meeting, and Nitzan Horowitz was next to him. Now, Nitzan Horowitz, I mentioned the other week ago when I was talking about the Minister of Health wanting to loosen abortion laws. That's this guy, right? So you see this in action. You see this guy who's saying, hey, let's get rid of the green pass. Let's just tell people that there's this vaccine. They can get vaccinated if they want, and it can be their choice. And then you have these two characters. One who's an Islamic supporter of jihad who has no business being in the Knesset. And then you have this other guy who may as well like he stands against everything that's good and just. And the guy who hates Israel is telling the guy who the bad person who wants the green pass and the abortions, he's telling him, "Oh, you can shut that guy up." And then Nitzan Horowitz had the audacity to say that, "Oh, we need people to get the vaccine, and oh, if you pay money, you can get a COVID a test, which will allow you to participate in society again for a couple of days if you don't want to get the vaccine. So we're not stopping you from participating in society." Oh, thank you, Minister Horowitz, for your generosity and your magnanimity. Thank you for allowing us to participate in society if we pay the nominal fee. For the record, I think to convert the cost in shekels to dollars, I think the antigen test, which gets you a 1 day pass, costs $10 US, and the one that gets you a 3 day pass, the PCR test, it costs you around $30.
Wait, this is a passport or pass just for getting tested, not for being vaccinated?
Yes, so if you get a negative COVID test, right, you can also get a green pass. But it doesn't last as long as the one you get for being vaccinated. Anyone can get a green pass regardless of their status as vaccinated or unvaccinated. It's just that if you get vaccinated, you get a green pass that lasts until the next booster.
Oh, so the next 6 months, while if you didn't get vaccinated, it would just be 3 days.
Yeah. That's the incentive that people have. They essentially said, "Oh, you can't do anything, but if you get the vaccine, we'll let you do things. We'll give you your rights back. We'll allow you to participate in society." I know a guy who goes to school. He's not vaccinated, and so the only way, and they stopped Zoom classes, of course. So the only way he can go to school is that twice a week he needs to get PCR tests, which costs 200 shekels.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's like $60 a week on top of paying money to live and go to school and work and this and that. Presumably he lives with his parents. There's no way that you can pay rent and pay for food and do this if you're also then going and getting a PCR test twice a week. There's
Oh,
no
he's
way.
actually doing it.
Yeah, which that's more than I'm doing, that's for sure. The green pass is why I'm not in school. If it wasn't for the green pass, I'd probably be in school right now. But I'm not really interested in getting the vaccine, and I'm not really interested in spending $60 a week for the privilege of going to school. Oh, thank you. I can now learn about what it is, whatever it is that you're trying to teach me, whatever liberal nonsense you're trying. Oh, thank you. What would I have done without you?
So what's it called? So about this guy who's so you just want to bring up that there are people pushing back towards the vaccine and that there is some sort of hope.
I don't know if hope is the right word, because the thing is that you didn't quite understand what was going on in the exchange, and I think we need to work on your Hebrew. But more importantly,
Well, it's been a while, so I'm a little bit rusty.
that is true. That is true. We need, since you're on the show, we need to be able to discuss Israeli politics. That's just the reality. So we need to work on your Hebrew, but that's for off the camera. We can discuss more later. That's not to get you in trouble, by the way. You're a very good guy, but we do need to work on your Hebrew. Anyways, but as someone who was watching the exchange, I felt disrespected. I wasn't there. I didn't. It brought out in me the same emotions that I felt when I was watching Naftali Bennett talk about how the people who are not vaccinated are irresponsible, and he essentially accused us of being criminals. It was the same thing. Like, just if you say anything bad about the vaccine in Israel, the higher ups feel like they have the right to tell you to shut up. They have the right to tell you, oh, you're stupid, you're a fool. I remember speaking to a doctor, and he said, like, I told him that, like, I don't want to get the vaccine partly for health reasons and partly for political reasons. I don't want to give the Israeli government the W, right? And he's like, well, your
Mhm.
your political reasons are stupid. Like, that's not your decision, doctor. I'm asking you for medical advice. I'm not asking you for politics. And he said, "Oh, so I'm gonna prescribe." I think he used the word prescribe in Hebrew. I don't remember because it was an offhand exchange. So I'm going to prescribe to you a visit to the cemetery so you can see how many people died of COVID. I'm like, that's inappropriate. But yeah, no, they think like they could just, the people who are pro-vaccine, like, not just like, oh, I want to get the vaccine, but people who are like for other people taking the vaccine, not for themselves taking the vaccine.
Pro mandate.
Pro mandate or pro coercion, right? Because it's not a mandate if they can't force you to do it, but it is coercive, right? So pro coercion. Those people, they have no boundaries, no boundaries, absolutely no boundaries. They don't think like, oh, what I'm saying, is it rude? Is it not rude? Like, it's crazy, and they're somehow the most uneducated about COVID, right? Somehow the most uneducated. It's amazing to me. I was trying to explain to this person, like, listen, it's their kid. I can't be their kid's parent. They have to be their own kid's parent. I'm just going to preface this. But I was trying to explain to them, why do you need your kid to be vaccinated? Your kid has no chance of getting COVID. Your kid can't get COVID. It's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's like
I
so
mean, even if
unlikely.
it's a very low statistics, but even if they do get it, it tends to be not serious.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, the reason I would want my grandmother to get the vaccine is because if she gets COVID, there's a higher chance, God forbid, of her passing away from it. Whereas if my little brother gets COVID, right, God forbid, there's a very good chance nothing's going to happen to my brother. He's going to be in bed for a couple days. I'll get
Yeah, but
over
they're
it.
not worried about young people obviously getting sick. They're worried about young people giving it to older people. That's why they want the young kids to get vaccinated. Because even though the kids might, it might not be severe, they could give it to, like you said, like grandma.
Well, I mean, ignoring the possible side effects of the vaccine, which we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube, but ignoring all that for a second, right? The evidence does not show that children can give the elderly the virus if they can't get the virus in the first place. It's been shown that most people at schools that schools are not like a COVID hotbed. Kids aren't getting it, the teachers aren't getting it. Who's getting COVID at the schools? Nobody, right? You bring up the statistics. The statistics don't bear that out, right? So it's not the kids that are going to get COVID. It's still going to be the older people that are going to get COVID. It's most likely the kids are not going to get COVID. And so between the side effects and the decreased odds of children getting and transmitting COVID, I have to ask people, like, why do you want your kid to get the vaccine? Is there no concern at all? Do you not care that there might be side effects? Right?
Well, also, I think it also comes down to the other thing you were talking about is some parents, unfortunately, there is a societal aspect to it. And some parents also feel like, look, my kid needs an education, needs to go to school, wants to have play dates, wants to hang out with other people. And unfortunately, either other parents or are, really strict about COVID or really neurotic about COVID and being sick, or the school is very overprotective about it. And unfortunately, in order for the kid to participate and, you know, kids are very high maintenance, you need to,
You
have
need to
them have
water them, turn them towards the sun.
yeah, you need them to have a life. You can't just, store them in the house all day. So, yeah, they want their kids to be vaccinated because unfortunately society dictates that yes, you must be vaccinated. And
Right, but that's not what I'm talking about though. Like if a parent tells me like, "Hey, listen," and by the way, I hate this attitude too, but at least this attitude I understand it, which is a very practical attitude. And the attitude is that, "Oh, I don't really care about the vaccine, but I want my kid to get out of the house and I want them to go to school and I want them, I
yes,
need to get back to
exactly.
work," right? So I get that, right? What I don't understand is if I'm presenting these issues to someone who's a parent, right? And I say like, "Hey, listen, these are the odds, these are the statistics, this is what the virus is, I'm pointing out facts." And they go, "Well, I don't care what you say. I'm going to get my kid vaccinated. If you don't want to get your kids vaccinated, that's fine. Just stay away from my kids." Right? As if because listen, if you're getting the vaccine because you want your kid to participate in society, right? And that's purely what it is. Then you're going to listen to what I have to say and you're going to say, that's interesting. But you know what? I can't afford to take that risk. I need my kid to participate in society, right? So I understand where you're coming from, but it's the disrespect. It's like, oh, if you have a different opinion, it's fake news. I don't know where you're getting your news from, but it's fake news. I would sooner hang out with a person who is literally dying of COVID than someone who is behaving like this, where like no facts can get to you, nothing you like, no thinking, no logic. Like there's no. It was interesting. I was watching the Timcast IRL podcast from over the weekend, and they were saying that like some people are literally just zombies. Nothing you say can change their mind. If the government says A, they do A. If the government says jump, they ask how high. And it's very amazing just like seeing that dynamic because that's when I get very scared. That's when I just want to run to Florida. And we'll talk about Florida later. But
Also, unfortunately, like you mentioned before, another reason why I don't think this is going away is because there's money involved. Okay. The fact that, yes, you must pay for the test and you must pay for the passports and green cards. And when let's say, someone flies to Israel, which you can't right now, and, you have to get for this test and that test, and it costs a lot of money.
it's a
And
racket.
yeah, and as long as there's money involved, like, it's not gonna go away because people are always gonna want money, and these people want money. It's another way to make money, so I don't see it going away anytime for that reason as well.
Right. But it's interesting because if you think about it, there's money to be made, right? Like, imagine if tomorrow Israel or any other country, like, imagine if, I don't know, say France, they decided we're done with COVID immediately. We're not closing down the airports unless they announce like they make a new law that says we're not closing down the airport for COVID anymore. You're not allowed to close it for like they ban closing of the airports or things because of COVID, right? So if you get exposed to COVID, maybe you self isolate if you need to. But that's it. It's over. Everything, you're allowed to come into the country. You could book flights. They won't cancel it for COVID reasons. Do you know how much money they would make?
Even just from the tourism alone.
Not just the regular tourism that would come back. I'm talking about the increased COVID tourism of the people who are like, thank God it's been 2 years. I'll go fucking anywhere. Right? If
Yeah.
Uganda announced tourism, they would go to Uganda because they just want to go somewhere, right? And imagine if they said, "Oh, we don't care about COVID anymore." Do you know how many people would flock to France if they said that? You know how many people would flock to England or to, I don't know,
Yeah.
anywhere, Russia, North Korea. If the North Koreans said, "Oh, we're not going to make you wear a mask," you know how many people would go to North Korea right now?
Wow.
No,
I would
it's
go there.
yeah, me
And
too.
I don't want to
Honestly,
go there.
yeah. All hail Supreme Leader. Yeah, but that's people are sick of, like, regular people are sick of the pandemic already. So anyone who's smart enough would say, "Hey, our economy would shoot through the roof immediately if we opened up to tourists." Israel has been trying to open up to tourists. We've spoken about it earlier. But the problem is that they're not here, they're not there. They're not fully committed to they're not fully committed either to closing the borders, and they're not fully committed to allowing tourism. So there are a lot of people who I know personally who are going to come over the next couple of weeks who their flights got canceled, and they're not going to make the trip because they can't afford to just constantly back and forth. Oh, is my flight canceled? Is it not canceled? They'd rather make more concrete plans. Even if the concrete plan is, sit in their undies and, drink a pina colada in their house with the AC on, that's a better use of their time than spending money on a plane ticket that's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. I know people personally that they had a trip scheduled to go to Israel and now they had to reschedule it to Florida.
Oh, Florida's going to get the business and Israel's not. I know people who are going to come to Israel, they were going to bring me stuff. And now they're not bringing me anything, and I'm not going to see them, and I'm not going to go out for dinner, and I'm just going to sit in my house waiting
And
for
play was it a new video game or no?
many things. It was multiple new video games and also some hygiene products. I like the Dr. Squatch shampoos. I've become a bit of a follower. I know that I don't want to
I
be a
don't know what that
consumer.
is.
They're actually very good natural soaps, deodorants. You ever noticed like that your deodorant can destroy your shirts over time?
Not really.
Oh, you never noticed that? Oh man, that's bad for me. Oops. My bad. Embarrassed. That's embarrassing. Oops. Oops. Yeah, no, but I like using natural deodorant better. So I get it from the States. They don't really import it to Israel yet. So although I should try getting it on Amazon now. We'll see. Anyways, but I get, natural deodorant imported from the States, and, I wanted to bring it in. Anyways, let's go to our next topic. What's the next topic? All right, economics and why it's important. So I was up at 4 in the morning today. I woke up from a really, really bad nightmare.
Oh.
Yeah, I woke up. You were actually in the nightmare.
Oh, really? I hope you didn't trip me and leave me to get eaten by zombies.
No, no, it was even worse. We drafted to the army again.
Oh, no.
I was in a class and I wasn't paying attention, and so the class was taught by my old captain, who decided that because I wasn't paying attention, he would draft me to the army again, which was weird because in the dream I thought I was in the army, but then he told me I was going to go to the army. I'm like, wait, I'm not in the army. And then I saw you were there. You had to explain to me that I wasn't in the army because you were paying attention and I wasn't, but for some reason you were punished too. So I guess I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rhodey. My bad,
Okay.
my B. And then I saw a bunch of people walking out of the classroom. I'm like, oh no. And then I woke up. It was awful. It was awful. And so
Mm.
so that's why I was up, and I just started watching YouTube shorts, and I saw this short, and it made me very angry because it was so economically illiterate. So we're gonna allow the clip to play, and then we're gonna talk about it.
Here's another list of things that I think should not cost money. First up, we have pads and tampons and really any feminine hygiene products. Do we really think women asked for this? To just bleed randomly every month? I think the fuck not. Next up, we have parking. I already pay for the fucking car, now I have to pay to put it somewhere? We really just whipped out our silly little paint and made rectangles and said, let's steal from people. Next up, we have water. Paying for something that quite literally keeps me alive. To be honest, I'd rather die of dehydration than give Poland Spring any more of my money. Water fucking created itself, like why do you think you can charge people for it? The next one is insulin. Another thing people need to stay the fuck alive. We're really just gatekeeping life. This is also something people just don't produce due to genetics. So what the fuck? And lastly, plane tickets to Florida. Why am I paying so much money to suffer? Hot take, but I'm pretty sure nothing good ever happens there.
All right, so the reason why I brought it up is because there's a lot of economics issues in the news right now, but I don't think they matter as much as the general ignorance of economics displayed by the current society. So many people do not know how the economy works. For example, this is one of the most striking examples to me, and I think it's the difference between being an adult and being a toddler and being an adult, right? And he says he thinks water should be free. Now, don't get me wrong. If water was free, like I wouldn't be upset. But
I mean,
I'm
it
just
is
talking.
free.
Technically, if you go to the stream, it's free. No one's going to stop you from lapping up some water in the stream or taking a tinkle there. But the reality is that what you're paying for when you pay for bottled Poland spring water is the effort of getting drinking water to wherever it is on the globe that you want it. Right? That's what you're getting.
You're paying for the convenience, not for the actual water.
Well, I mean, in some cases, you are paying for the water. So, for example, if you are in Israel and you're getting desalinated water, or you're in California, you're getting desalinated water, you are literally paying someone to clean up ocean water for you because ocean water is useless, right? You can't even use it to water the ground because it's too salty. It will destroy your crops, right?
Yeah. But
That's why, that's why there are no gardens on the coast. It's sand, right? If it was
yeah. True.
if it was useful, it would help crops grow. But there's no crops on the beach, right? So it's not useful for anything that we need as humans. So when you're desalinating water, you're making it drinkable. You're literally taking a thing that wasn't a thing and turning it into a thing that we can use now. Or maybe if you're paying for bottled water or for water through the pipe system, you're paying for water in your house as opposed to going and going to the well, right?
Yeah, I mean, what people don't understand, and for some reason, a lot of people actually don't know this, but a lot of times you could go into a restaurant or a store that serves food or beverages, and you could literally ask them for a cup of, tap water. You don't need to go out to the fridge and buy a bottle of water, and they will actually give it to you, and it's free. A lot of people don't actually know that.
Right. And a lot of these places offer service like that for two reasons. Number one, they want you, like, maybe you're not interested in eating now, but you come back later and you're like, oh, they offered me free water. You know what? I'll try that place, right? They'll do that. But also, they know they're just public accommodations. They know that the people walking around are paying the taxes for the police and for the sidewalks and for the roads that allow people to come and patronize them. So they're more than happy to allow people to use the bathroom. My personal rule, I think I learned this in Talmud class, is that when I go to a location, I like to try and if I use the bathroom, I try to buy something, like assuming it's not like I don't know, like a fancy wine and cheese store where I'm not prepared to make. But if I like walk into, I don't know, say like I walk into like a pizza shop, I'll buy like a cup of soda or something, just to say that I didn't use a freeload off their bathroom. But there are
I'm just
many times.
imagining like we're together and you're like, hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to the bathroom, and you come back with a really fancy like wine and cheese. Start speaking all fancy at the end of it.
Well, it's actually funny because I actually did that one time. Like I actually did that. I one time went to the barber shop and I needed some help with something, but the barber wasn't there. So I went next door to the guy who sells wine. And so I asked him for some help, and then I'm like, wow, I was just looking at the wines, but I didn't have the heart to tell him that, I was just looking, I like wine. So he sold me like this really nice, like $40 bottle of wine. And I was like, okay, well, it's actually, I just recently had it. It was very, very good. But it's like that did happen to me one time where someone was very helpful to me. So I patronized his business, which I think is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not, it's a good thing, actually. It's good to build community like that.
But back to economics. So he also like mentioned a few other things like, how tampons should be free. I mean, someone still had to produce those products. I mean, if no one else produced them, then, there would just be, I don't want to get graphic here, but our sidewalks would be all red. Okay.
No, they listen. The reality is that we had other ways of dealing with it, but as with a lot of things, it was a long and arduous process, and
And
it changed very.
unsanitary, I think,
Yeah,
also.
it's more sanitary now, but I think a lot of these feminine products were made by men who wanted their wives to, be more comfortable, right? But I think in India there was a guy who it talks about this in this book, Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But it was a guy who was so obsessed with helping his wife with her, like, you know problems there, that like he like lost a lot of money, and his wife left him for a little bit, and then he made a ton of money because he solved the problem. And I think people don't get, like, there's a certain removal people have from how things used to be when things were a lot more difficult and how they are now. And we, as are you Gen Z? Are you technically Gen Z?
I mean, there's debates. I'm 96, and there's debates whether Gen Z starts in 96 or 2000.
Yeah, so but
So
I'm definitely a millennial, but we're like right at the precipice. So, millennials, Gen Z, we were born into a world that pretty much was already perfect, right? All political problems aside, if you're a millennial living in the first world, you have it made, right? No concept of real suffering, right? Like my grandfather was in Soviet Russia, and I'm just like here, like, oh yeah, let's go get pizza. Can you imagine a bunch of these commies going up to Joseph Stalin saying, "Oh, I want to be the commune poet"? It's like, okay, buddy, get your back against the wall now. It's like, and that's why these people are so economically ignorant, because they just don't know anything. They don't know, and the problem is that we don't. High school doesn't educate these kids. Like, I remember in high school, and I went to a pretty good high school, all things considered. I wasn't very well educated, but I learned a lot. But
no, it's unfortunate they don't teach you personal finance. It's really an issue. They teach you everything else, and they like, it's weird. They say like, "Oh, you need to be a, general well-rounded person," but they don't teach you the most important thing. If education is meant to, in the end goal is supposed to have you be educated and to make a living, well, the most important is to, personal finance and, economics, and they just don't teach that.
well,
I don't
that's
understand why.
well, I'm going to parse that statement there for a second. There's two things that you said that I'm going to have to disagree with. Number one, about the finances. I wasn't talking about finances here specifically. I was talking about economics. Now, it's
Okay.
very right. No, but it's not the same thing, and there's a difference. And the reason why they're two separate topics is that finances is how you manage a bank account, right? Like personal finance is like, okay, so here's how to save money, here's how to like pay taxes, this, that, right? Like that's a very practical thing. And I think it's good for people to know that. I'm not denigrating that at all. But I think to be a good citizen, it's more important to know economics. And economics is about the an economy, right, is about scarce resources with alternative uses, right? That's what an economy is, right? That's why there's no air economy, because air is practically, like, unless you live in a really really bad country, there's enough air for everyone. Unlimited air. You don't need any more air, right? But water is an economy because there's a limited amount of water. and it has many uses. It can go in your mouth as a drink. It can be used to heat pasta. You could shower with it. You can turn into holy water and, melt witches. There's lots of things you could do. No, it's true. You could do lots of things with water, but the important thing is
The
that,
last one's definitely the most important one.
I mean, listen, if I'm gonna go fight heretics, I need the tools of the trade, right? So, power of Christ compels you, I'm sorry. That's too much. This is supposed to be a nice Jewish podcast, I know. But anyways, no, but the point is that those serious topics aside, the point I'm trying to make here is that there's many uses for water, and so we have prices to have people self-regulate how much water they need, right? That's why we don't just give out water for free, because if everyone was taking as much water as they wanted, there would be a shortage, right? We actually, in Israel, there was a great video made by PragerU talking about why Israel became the hydro superpower of the Middle East. And it's because in Israel, they made sure that water was always priced at market price. You weren't allowed to give discounts, and you weren't allowed to raise the price. And that's why Israel became a water superpower, because they followed the rules of economics. They ended up having
And
surplus.
also the fact that, there's not a lot of it, so they had to invent ways to make more, like creating more filters to use water from the Mediterranean and stuff like that.
Well, desalination was a thing they did, but more importantly, and I think this came first, was the drip irrigation. They literally found a way to use the least
Yeah.
amount of water to water their crops. They
Yeah, I
didn't
remember
like
that.
like in ancient Egypt. You know what they would do? They would like build canals so that when the Nile overflew, like it would just
Yeah,
cover
it
their
would
fields.
flood.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
flood, but that's a waste of water, and many times that could kill crops. Right? Drip irrigation is very useful, not only because it saves water, but it allows them to use water that you wouldn't use for drinking necessarily.
But
So
also it's like very efficient. It's like you're giving a little bit. You're giving it you're not giving it a lot, but like
you're giving it
at a
just enough.
you're giving it just enough constantly instead of giving it a lot in one, pour, and then,
Right.
a few hours later giving it another pour.
Right. You don't have to think about it. It's very nice. But also it allows them to use like water like after you've relieved yourself that you wouldn't necessarily drink, right? But if you use it to water the crops, you're watering the crops with really, really good water, because if it's just wastewater, well, human waste is good fertilizer. So you use it to water the crops, and then then the water goes up into the sky. It condenses, goes up in the sky. There's more rain. It's actually why Israel has become less of a desert over time, and it's why Nevada is becoming less of a desert because of that same reason. Because as more people plant crops and they're watering the ground, more water is evaporating into the atmosphere, and it's creating clouds, which causes rain, which changes the climate change. There we go. Proved climate change. There we go. We did it, boys. We don't have to do
Yeah.
the podcast anymore. We proved it. All right.
So you think that learning economics is more important
Yes.
than personal finance?
Yes. Because uh, personal finances are very important. Don't get me wrong. You need to know how to balance a bank account, how to pay taxes, things like that. I think that's very important. But economics is not just about your individual money. It's about how the government spends money and what the words they say to justify it, and how the different aspects in society interact with each other. So, for example, it's very important. The reason why economics is very important is because, unlike finance, economics will teach you how essentially the butterfly effect, right? If you do one thing in one sector of the economy, it can affect a different sector of the economy, right? A lot of people don't learn that. They don't get that concept that if you do something, you try to solve a problem by legislating, it can have wide reaching effects. And that is hopefully what the study of economics will do, right? Economic
So so you're saying they should learn that in high school because people learn economics in college, but you're saying that they should learn it in elementary and high school.
No, not maybe not elementary school, but
Fine, not elementary. Just
elementary is a
imagine little
little
kids.
early. But no, but like honestly, why not high school? If you have time to learn, I don't know, Lord of the Flies in high school, right? You have time to learn Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. It's not even a perfect book, by the way. Like there are things there that I disagree with, right? But it's a good start, right? It's a good book. It's a good starting off point for people to understand economics, right? Real economics, not Marxist economics, not feminist economics. When I took an econ class in college, right? This is already in the Hebrew University. Like we had like feminist and Marxist economics, which is just nonsense. But more importantly, you want to learn real economics, like the school what's the different schools of thought in economics? There's the Chicago school, and there's what is there? What else is there? I don't remember. I wasn't a very good student, if you couldn't tell. um, but no, it's very important to understand these basic relationships that things have with each other. And I'm not saying like, have you ever taken an economics class?
Yes, and what was interesting about that, it was a Russian woman who grew up in the old, Soviet Russia. So she knew the differences between, capitalism and communism, like the real communism. And, she loved capitalism. She did not like it. I mean, besides for me not understanding a word what she said because of her accent, but she I did learn a lot from that class, and it was a good class.
Right. So, I mean, I also took an economics class. I wasn't particularly good, but it was taught in another language, so there is that. That's more than a lot of other people can say. But what I will say is that if I was designing, like if I could go back to my local high school where I went to school, I would tell the principal, "Hey, listen, instead of teaching the color of water or Chaim Potok's The Chosen, have them read Basic Economics over this summer. Like it's a very good book. It's not like dry and boring. And honestly, they're going to have more than enough time to read useless literature that no one cares about in 10 years from now.
Or The
Basic
Big Short. That was also a really good one.
The Big Short.
So The Big Short is it was a book that's I forget who wrote it, and then they made it to a movie with a lot of famous people, and it's literally just about the 2008 housing crisis, and it really it's a very educational movie.
Right,
So
but like I don't I guess maybe it's just nitpicking, but if I was making an economics class for high school kids, it wouldn't have graphs, there wouldn't be charts, I wouldn't be asking them to calculate. And like, you've ever done those charts where like you have to like draw the two lines and find out where they intersect? And
uh,
yeah, like I never
yeah,
liked that because it was all theoretical and I hated that. Like I can understand the point without drawing the damn graph, right? That I don't really care about that. What interested me was more the theory, right? And the theory is like things relate to each other, right?
yeah, like supply and demand and other things.
Yeah, it's important that the kids get the concept. So I would go to the high school and say, here's a textbook on economics. Very simple, very easy to read. Have you ever read Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell?
No, I didn't get to it.
You can get to it. So it's actually a book I highly recommend. I think everyone should read it. I have a copy between me and one of my roommates. We have a copy in both Hebrew and English.
Yeah, but I'm also not in a rush to read it because I know economics a lot. So,
Right, but the way that I think is very interesting about the way that Thomas Sowell writes is that when he teaches economics in a way where he almost says, here's the concept, we're going to explain why it's important by using an example of where it didn't exist and using that to explain its function. So that's what I find very fascinating about that book, that it doesn't say like it's a very practical book, because unlike a lot of classes where they talk about what the concept is supposed to do or what the thing is supposed to represent or whatever, here it's like very practical. Okay, so this is what it's supposed to do. Oh, so how do you know that this is what it's supposed to do? Well, let's look at a situation where this didn't exist, right? For example, he talks about brands and why brands are important. And he explains that in the Soviet Union, for example, where everything was the Soviet Union brand, the Soviets, the citizens, they actually got good at looking at the barcode and seeing which factory it came out of, and they used the factory as a brand. So it's very interesting that they do it that way. and that's why I think it makes such a fantastic economics book for people. And I feel and I feel like it's very important because we're having this crisis now where the banks are now I think the Federal Reserve, they want to raise the interest rate because the inflation's getting too high. And then you
Yeah, it's
have,
around 6.8 at this point this year, which is it's the highest since the 80s.
dude, I feel it. Like you go to the supermarket and just the things you can get with $100, it's just so much different.
Yeah, so they want to raise the interest rates to try to mitigate that.
See, that's the thing. I don't even know how that would help. I just, I'm also economically illiterate in that way. Like I don't get.
Because by raising, I'll just do a little bit of explanation. By raising interest rates, then businesses will be less tempted to take out more loans, therefore doing less business. And by doing less business, there'll be, I guess, less demand.
So
And
essentially, they want to deflate the currency by decreasing demand.
um, something like that. Basically, in companies won't be taking out as much money because there'll be a higher interest rate on it. So they will essentially be doing a lot less with it, and would basically slow down the economy's growth. That's the point of it. When you make interest rates low, they do that so they can grow the economy fast, because then people will be tempted to take out more loans. And when they want to slow down the economy, um, for example, because of inflation, then they pump up interest rates so that it slows down the growth of the economy.
I think I basically didn't understand that, but okay, that's because I'm a moron. No, I got it more or less. I think I understood it.
I mean, look, I could go into way more detail, but that would take another hour.
No, for sure, no, and that's not the important thing. The important thing is that people don't understand, right? And yes, the stupid TikTok video is the stupid TikTok video, right? But it's what the stupid TikTok video means, right? It's now these people who are making these stupid TikTok videos every 4 years are going to be voting for the president of the United States. And they're going to be making decisions based on thinking that water should be free, right? Our ancestors didn't think water should be free. They knew that you could go down to the stream and get your water, but they wanted good water. They wanted more convenient water. They wanted better water. So they paid for it, right? If we had the attitude that axiomatically, not that, listen, I can understand if someone wants to say, hey, listen, that stream isn't a nature preserve. That water should be off limits to big corporations. I get that. I can hear that, right? You agree with me, right?
In a nature preserve, that should be off limits. Yeah, because it's
Yeah,
a nature
I think we can
preserve.
all agree with that. I think we can agree that if, let's say, on public land or on non government, unlike government owned land or whatever, that like you should be able to walk up to a stream and start lapping up water. I think we can agree with that, right?
Yeah,
Right. The thing is that you know most people, when they say water is free, they mean it as a truism, that it's always true. There's never a situation where you should have to pay for water. And if we believe that, right, then we would still be living in a time where we would have to go down to the well to get water. Because if, let's say, the guy building the pipes into our house said, oh, this water that's coming into your house, you're going to have to pay the water company for that water. They're going to be charging you. And you have to do maintenance on the pipes. They would say, well, water should be free. So I guess they'd say, oh, well, I guess I'm not, I guess I'm just not building pipes in your house. But guess what? If enough people don't want to build pipes in their house, we don't have a water company. We'd still be, pooping in outhouses and getting water from the well, which I think we can all agree that having running water in the house is very nice.
I mean, but it also is somewhat free. You can go to a public park, and they have uh, water fountains. But even that's not even free, because that's paid with your tax dollars.
Yeah, it's not free. It's just you're not. It's just where you're paying the costs, right? The question, like, it's the same. Everything has a cost, right? And this idea that there should be public ownership of most things, right? That's a very retrograde attitude, right? That's
In
why
the economics, that's the number one. That's the first rule you learn: is there's no such thing as a free lunch.
there's no such thing. Everything, and that's another thing people don't get. There's the price of the thing, and then there's the cost of the thing, right? If you go to the water fountain at the park, right, and you drink the water, the price may be zero. You may not have to barter to drink that water, but there is a cost, right? You're not paying it up front, but you're paying it on the back end. Someone's paying it on the back end, right? People don't get that. They don't get the difference between price and cost, and it's very easy to make that mistake because you go to the store, you say, "What's the price?" or "How much is this going to cost me?" Right? But the cost is not the price. The price is the number next to it that tells you what you need to barter to get that thing, right? More broadly, of course, of course some economist is going to get upset at me because I'm sure the definition of price is a little more broad than that. So forgive me for anyone watching this who's economically inclined. But strictly speaking, the price is the number next to the object that says how much it costs or how much you need to barter for it. But the cost is all the things you could have done if you didn't take that thing or you didn't do that thing.
Can you repeat that? All the things you could have done if what?
If you didn't take the thing, right? Or you didn't make the decision. If you made a different decision, right? So the cost of so the price of a hamburger could be $1, but the cost of a hamburger could be an ice cream, it could be a milk carton, it could be a pack of trading cards, it could be literally anything that costs $1, right? It's all the things you don't have access to now that you made the decision to buy a hamburger.
Oh, you're talking about potential. Okay.
Yeah, it's like all the alternative uses for that dollar, right?
Yeah. All right.
Right. So, and people don't get that, right? They don't get that if, let's say, the guy who's bringing water into your house, right? If he's not compensated properly, he's not going to do that. He's going to find something else that makes him money. The cost of him doing business in your house is not good enough for him to do it for free on the axiom that water should be a human right. As sad as it is, the reality is that it's a very forward thinking way of doing things when we say that people deserve to be compensated for their work and that there's private property. It's very forward thinking. It's very useful for that.
Yeah. Things that he doesn't understand is he's trying to say that in his video that maybe we shouldn't be paying for the water. It should be free and like the government should be paying for the water. But even if the government does paying, you're still paying for it through your tax dollars.
Yeah, he'd be complaining about something else. If everything was paid for by the government, right? Someone would be complaining that the taxes are too high, or people would be saying that the government's going to default. There's a reason why this doesn't work. Eventually you have to pay. The bill comes, right? You can't be on the dole forever.
And also, these companies making money is an incentive to, give bottled water. If, like, for example, the reason why people are making bottled water because there's obviously a demand for bottled water. If there wasn't a demand for bottled water, no one would be buying bottled. There wouldn't be bottled water because there would be no demand.
I mean, there's simply just places where it's very difficult to get water to through any sort of natural body,
Yeah.
right?
So, are we talking about a desert? Or are we talking about New York City?
No,
Like,
not just a desert. I'm talking about, let's say you go to a remote place in the middle of nowhere, right? It's not necessarily a desert. Maybe it's very mountainous. Maybe it's like cold. It's mountainous, so you can't really drink the ice, right? You're gonna freeze, right? So if someone sets up shop, they bring a bottle of water. Now all of a sudden you have drinking water, and you don't have to worry. Oh, is it contaminated with some animal took a piss on it? Oh, this that. They bring you fresh water, and guess what? No one's forcing you to buy Poland Spring bottled water. If you don't want to buy bottled water from Poland Spring or Nestle, whatever it is, they make containers you could put water in from the tap. But that also costs money. You just don't pay for it at the tap. You pay for it at the monthly bill or the bi-monthly bill or wherever it is. But you're still paying for it,
yeah, no, exactly.
right? You're always paying for water. It's just a question of where the bill comes. People don't get that the bill is always there. They don't always pay attention.
Yeah, exactly.
But thinking economically, right? Thinking in terms of what is this going to cost me, right? That's good even for things that don't cost money, right? That's good for houses. Like if you're trying to rent a house, it's good for making religious decisions. It's good for making decisions if you want to marry someone. Like what are the cost benefit analysis of marrying this person, right? It sounds very unromantic, but everyone makes that kind of calculation in their head, right? there are times when, if everyone had the option to date as many people as they wanted and there was no consequence for dating multiple people, most people would never make an economic decision about who they sleep with, right? It's because they can only sleep with one person. If they can only get married to one person, then they start saying, do I really want to sleep with this person? Do I not want to sleep with this person? We see this lack of economic thinking everywhere. Everywhere you go, people do not think in a way that is beneficial to them. And it's very sad. And if only they taught basic economics in high school, maybe we wouldn't be subjected to TikTok videos that talk about all the things that would be free if only unicorns existed and they ate rainbows and farted butterflies. Anyways, but let's get to the next topic. That's I think very relevant to the past two topics and kind of wraps them all up in a nice little neat little bow. As our final topic today, Ron DeSantis proving that he is the greatest man. He is one of the best leaders in our days. They just passed the Stop Woke Act.
Pretty woke.
No,
I'm joking.
Stop Woke Act. Do you know what it stands for?
I actually never knew. I actually don't know what woke actually stands for.
No,
is it an acronym?
No, here it's an acronym.
Oh, here's an acronym, but woke is usually not an acronym.
It's not. It means you're awake to injustices or things like
That's
that.
what I thought it was. It's like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
awake.
yeah.
It's like you're taking away the A, kind of.
So it's kind of like in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where this is a great moment where although it's kind of woke, so it's ruined by the wokeness, but it was funny in context, where Captain Holt, you know who Captain Holt is, right?
Yeah.
So he says, I am, as the kids say, awake. And then the main character goes, don't you mean woke? He says, well, yes, but that's grammatically incoherent because he's the robot captain. So he insists on speaking correctly in proper grammar all the time, which is why that's funny. But which is why what you said is even funnier because it reminded me of that. But here woke is actually an acronym. It's the whole thing says Stop Wrongs Against Our Kids and Employees Act.
All right.
Right? So
good play on words.
It is a nice play on words. I like this. Ron DeSantis, again, proving that he is a leader, right? He's tackling wokeness by essentially saying there's two main aspects to this bill. Parents can sue schools for schools teaching woke ideology, for critical race applied principles, right? And employees can sue companies for making them sit in on diversity training, things like that.
Okay.
Right? And this is important.
Well, you mean there's two aspects. It's the first one is that they're not allowed to force their employees, and the schools are not allowed to enforce on the kids.
No, the kids are not allowed to be taught woke theory at all, right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's the ban, okay.
That's the ban, right? But also it allows employees, if they're forced to do diversity training, namely, let's say you work for a company, right? And all of a sudden they say, oh, we're having a diversity training with HR, blah, 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 blah. You can say, oh, well, that's cute. Well, I don't really want to do that. So bye.
Good one.
Yeah, that's cute. That's cute. I'm gonna go back to my desk and do something else. See ya. Bye. I have a feeling that once you that in Florida, HR departments are gonna fall apart tomorrow. HR is the worst, honestly. Oh my god, HR is just the worst. HR. No, but the reason it would is because immediately, if let's say you said, oh, you don't have this meeting that everyone needed to go to get paid and to qualify for this thing and that thing, I don't have to do it now. It's like, oh, well, I guess I'm gonna go to my desk, or I'm just gonna go eat a sandwich, or do literally anything else other than be here and sit here and do woke stuff. Because I don't care how woke you are, you don't wake up in the morning and say to yourself, oh, you know what I want to do right now? I want to sit on a woke seminar right now. Really want to do that. That's what I really want to do. That's how they get it, because they know that you have to work, right? They know you have to earn a living. So the deal is that if you're already there, you're a captive audience. And they say, oh, if you don't do the diversity training, if you don't do this, you don't do that, then you get fired for not complying with regulations. So now Ron DeSantis said, oh, well, if the companies do that, you can sue the companies. We'll back you up.
Yeah, which is probably the more important part of the bill, is that the employees and the parents can take action.
Right. This is very similar to the Texas abortion bill, which essentially says anyone can sue a doctor for performing an abortion. Which, if just like, I understand it sounds bad to some people, but if you think about it, right? If you think about what Republicans believe abortion is, which is to say a murder, right? Then if it's murder, then there's no reason why I shouldn't be allowed to say, hey, this guy did an abortion, he committed murder, I want to take him to court, right? And so here it's the same thing. It's like, oh, critical race theory, it's like racist, it goes against Title IX, and it's against the American founding creed. And it's also this this foreign ideology that's coming to supplant itself as the dominant religion. And so people want to say no. And so this gives fangs to the people who don't want to sit in HR meetings or have their kids taught about how bad white people are and how terrible black people, are oppressed or whatever.
What would usually happen if that part wasn't there for parents allowed to take action? What would happen?
So what would happen is that if, let's say, this is what we saw throughout the country, right? Where essentially the parents would know that the kids are being taught the critical race theory, right? We actually saw it this last week. There was some mother who came in yelling and screaming, crying into one of these one of these school board meetings, because apparently the school allowed this woman's daughter, or I think woman's daughter, to change her name and start identifying as a boy without letting the mom know.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, she came like yelling and screaming. Like, you can go on YouTube, watch the clip. If you've watched any other podcasts, you've seen the clip. It's not a secret, but I felt bad for this woman, but under these rules, if, let's say, this mom found out that school did that, she could take them to court herself. She doesn't have to go through the school board. She doesn't have to talk to them about it. She can just say, oh, like, oh, this is what they're teaching my kid. This is what they taught my kid. Here's the evidence. Here's the proof. And now it's in court. It's not being dealt with by the school board. It's being dealt with a court of law. And that's what's really important about this, because you're not going to in Florida, you're not going to see any more school board meetings. You're not going to see it at all. You want to know why? Because guess what the parents are going to do? If the parents feel that the schools are taking advantage of their kids, teaching them critical race applied principles, teaching them gender theory, if they're just going to get sued, and that's going to give the law fangs, because there's no institution that could stop them from being taken to court, and just everyone can go now.
And the parent doesn't even have to win the case to do damage, because the lawsuit alone, no one wants to deal with a lawsuit. There's a lot of money that goes into it and a lot of time that just they don't want to go through. So it's a pain to have to go through, a lawsuit, which is in itself a punishment.
Right. And imagine, and it's not just one parent, because if it was one parent, it'd be like, okay, well, one parent. But imagine if every single individual parent came and said, oh, you taught my kid this, or you taught my kid that. Well, guess what? The school can't handle that. So now all of a sudden they have to start teaching your kids math again. Can you imagine?
Yeah, or they can start teaching economics in our case.
Well, now that they have all this time where they're not teaching critical race applied principles, maybe they'll teach the kids something about economics. Maybe then we'll stop seeing these TikTok videos. Oh man, that would be great. Yeah, sure. But can you imagine? It's like, I really want to borrow Ron DeSantis for the weekends. Can we just? We need Ron DeSantis in Israel. Like, can we borrow him, please? Like, listen, just give us 10 days with Ron DeSantis. He's the God King of Israel for 10 days. He'll fix it. We'll give him right back to Florida. We promise.
We promise we'll give him right back.
We promise we'll give him. We just need to borrow him for a little bit. We have so many problems and we just need someone to fix them. Can you imagine? Just.
Yeah, and also, can New York borrow him?
Do you live in New York? Or I thought you live in Jersey.
I do, but I'm basically a New Yorker. I'm 15 minutes away.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
This is gonna get a lot of red flags out there for New Yorkers listening, but that's exactly why I'm saying it, because I know it probably bothers you. But yeah, no, I always say to people I live in near New York, so, or I just say I'm a New Yorker.
That's true. That's true. And listen, if it can piss off a New Yorker, then that's pretty much the only reason you need to do it.
Yeah, I know, right? My life's complete.
Just to hear them say, "Hey, I was walking there. What was cutting me in line, eh?"
Yeah.
Why are we making fun of them like they're Italian? New Jersey is basically New Italy. I don't know why we're saying that. Anyways, but yeah, no, we need Ron DeSantis in Israel. Oh my God.
Anyways,
Thank you for joining us this week. You can find us on YouTube. This is a new thing. Google, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Audible. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.